3 spine-chilling true stories of sinister hauntings revealed under the cursed cover of night. Sarah's heart raced as she stepped into her quiet home, the door creaking ominously behind her. Long shifts as a nurse left her exhausted, but tonight felt different. The house was drenched in an eerie stillness. "Jake?" she called softly, straining to hear any response. The joy-filled laughter that once filled these walls had faded since the accident, leaving behind whispers of sorrow. Tonight, however, she sensed something more malevolent, something lurking just beyond her sight. As she climbed the stairs, shadows danced along the walls. It wasn't just the dim light playing tricks, they moved with purpose. Caution prickled her skin. She pushed Jake's door open, revealing her son huddled in the corner, wide eyes full of terror. "Mom," the man in the shadows, he's outside. His voice trembled, whispering words that sent a chill through her veins. At first, she brushed it off a child's wild imagination, but unease gnawed at her gut. Days passed. Darkness stretched longer, and the once familiar suburb now felt like a stage for something sinister. Shadows flickered past her vision at odd hours, and the air crackled with unspoken dread. Neighbors waved and smiled, yet their friendly gestures masked hidden truths. Sarah found herself frequently looking over her shoulder, feelings of paranoia simmering just below the surface. What if there's something out there? A voice nagged in her mind. But she pushed it aside, instead focusing on reassuring Jake, trying to mask her own fears. "It's just your imagination, sweetheart. There's nothing there," she often said, even as the doubt twisted inside her. Then came Mr. Johnson, the neighbor. He stopped by for small talk at first, but now, his presence was unsettling. Always lingering longer than necessary, his gaze lingering too intently on Jake when Sarah was preoccupied. A creeping suspicion fused with maternal instinct told her this man wasn't just friendly. He was watching them. One evening, while seated on the couch with her son, the tension mounted. Suddenly, Jake froze, inhaling sharply. "Mom, he's outside again," Jake whispered, his voice barely audible. The chill swept through Sarah like an icy breeze. She glanced outside to see shadows shifting under the streetlight. Were those figures clinging to the darkness? Panic knotted her stomach. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The next day was a blur of unease. At school, Jake found himself cornered by Mr. Johnson. All around them, laughter rang like an ominous bell. Sarah's heart raced in her chest as her fears crystallized into reality. She rushed to the schoolyard, and upon reaching, saw Jake's wide, terrified eyes locked onto the man, skin prickling with disbelief. Panic surged. The predator was no longer anonymous. With a resolve fueled by desperation, Sarah approached Mr. Johnson, fists clenched. But just as she did, a figure loomed in the shadows behind the trees. Heart pounding, she stopped. Was it just her imagination, or was there truly something dark stalking them? Dread filled the air, and echoes of whispers spiraled around Sarah, wrapping around her mind like a suffocating shroud. What had been just shadows were now faces, haunting her every thought. The line between her grief and a more sinister reality blurred deeper, squeezing her chest as she faced the horror ahead. Sarah's nerves frayed as she faced Mr. Johnson, his expression inscrutable in the dying light. The whispers around her grew louder, almost mocking in their intensity. A sudden chill coursed through her, a warning that something was very wrong. Jake's hand clutched hers tightly, his small body trembling against her side. She needed to protect him, to shield him from the lurking terror. "Can I help you with something?" Mr. Johnson's voice was smooth, almost too calm. It sent a shiver down her spine. She felt the weight of his gaze, each look heavy with implications. Was she imagining it, or did he lean in slightly, as if hungry for her reaction? "Stay away from my son," Sarah blurted out, anger igniting her fears. The crowd behind her continued their playtime oblivion, laughter spiraling into the evening air, ignorant of the darkness creeping in. His eyes narrowed, a flicker of annoyance flashing across his features. Just looking out for him. Kids need guidance, especially after what happened. She flinched at his words, her heart racing. How could he know about the accident? It had been so personal, so devastating. "We're fine. Just keep your distance, please." The warning hung heavily in the air, each word a desperate plea. As she turned to lead Jake away, the shadows around the park thickened. The streetlight flickered as if struggling against an unseen force. Sarah felt a wave of dread, the very air heavy and suffocating. She pulled Jake closer, whispering calming words even as panic tightened her throat. But it was too late. She felt it, a presence lurking even closer, brushing against her skin like cold fingers. A flash of movement, a whisper of a shadow darting behind the trees, caught her attention. Sarah glanced back towards Mr. Johnson, but he was no longer standing alone. A dark figure emerged behind him, indistinct but undeniably there. It loomed larger than the man, its shape disturbing in the way it seemed to absorb the light. "Jake!" She yanked on his hand, adrenaline pushing her forward as they raced back to their car parked at the edge of the lot. Heart thumping like a drum, she quickly stumbled into the driver's seat. "Mom, what was that?" Jake's small voice cut through the horror. He was shaking now, confusion mingling with fear. "I don't know, sweetheart. I don't know." Tears pricked at her eyes, but she forced them back. She had to stay strong. As she started the engine, the darkness outside seemed to respond instantly, as if awakened by their fear. She stole a glance in the rearview mirror. Mr. Johnson stood there, the dark figure behind him now more defined, no longer a mere shadow. It wore a grin, twisted and malevolent, eyes glinting with a sinister light. "Drive, Mom. Please." Jake screamed, and she hit the gas, tires screeching against the pavement as they tore away into the night, but as they drove, the shadows followed. They flickered in and out of her sight, a dense fog of unease settling over her. Sarah's heart raced, each stretch of road growing darker, the pull of an unseen hand woven tightly around her frantic mind. Did they escape? Or had they only awakened something that would now hunt them under the cover of night? The road ahead opened into a dense thicket, trees looming like ancient sentinels poised to swallow them whole. As she pressed down harder on the gas, the trees seemed to lean in closer, blocking their escape. The shadows, once merely whispers, now writhed in the back seat, clawing for attention, for life. "Mom, what if it's not just the man?" Jake cried, his voice shrill, panic spilling into every word. Sarah's breath caught. What if it weren't just Mr. Johnson? What if something darker had slipped through the cracks of their reality, feeding off their grief, their fear? There was no denying their pulse quickened, both heart and terror weaving into one. And in the rearview mirror, the shadow shifted, forming a shape so horrifying, so grotesque, that Sarah had to fight to keep her grip on the wheel. "Hold on, Jake," she whispered, but deep down she knew, the true horror had just begun. What was still waiting for them once they broke free of the darkness? The noise of the tires echoed in the blackness. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she gripped the wheel, her knuckles turning white. Jake's breath came in rapid bursts beside her, each inhale tinged with terror. Thoughts raced through her mind. What if they were truly trapped? What if that darkness had no intention of letting them go? "Mom!" Jake cried, his voice cracking with fear. "Look out!" She swerved just in time. A massive tree loomed ahead, its gnarled roots reaching out like the skeletal fingers of some forgotten thing. The headlights barely cut through the overwhelming murk, illuminating only a sliver of the road ahead. She accelerated, though the engine protested, sputtering angrily. "We need to get out of here, Jake." Just keep your eyes closed, okay? But Jake shook his head, his small body quaking. I can't. I have to see. What if it comes closer? The shadows danced just outside the car, seeping and swirling, almost alive. As they whipped past, a whisper brushed the window, a slow, dragging voice that sent shivers crawling along her spine. Sarah, it hissed, deep and guttural, like the echo of something better left unmentioned. Stop it. Just stop. She yelled, but the words felt weak against the cacophony of fear closing in. Her palms were slick against the steering wheel, sweat mingling with the scent of burnt rubber. Mom, I can feel it. Jake's voice rose, wavering on the edge of a scream. It's in here with us. Sarah snapped her gaze to the rearview mirror again. That figure, its grin burned into her memory, was still there, inching closer. Darkness wrapped around it, spilling into the car like a thick fog, obscuring Jake's terrified face. Look away. She shouted. The urge to protect him swelled inside her gut, even as her pulse quickened, threatening to overtake her reason. They had to break free of this nightmare, but the winding road offered no solace, only the promise of towering trees that threatened to ensnare them further. Suddenly, the engine sputtered again, losing power. The headlights dimmed, flickering like the last gasp of a dying ember. Desperate, she slammed her foot on the gas. Come on, come on. The shadows outside pressed closer, macabre forms morphing into more recognizable shapes, faces twisted in anguish and laughter. Were they the lost spirits of victims, or had they once walked among the living? Mom, Jake's small voice broke through her mounting dread. He pointed toward the rear window, eyes wide as saucers. It's right there. I can see it. She turned, heart in her throat. The figure loomed inches from the glass, amorphous and grotesque, its mouth still forming that horrific grin, eyes layered in darkness that felt like an endless abyss. Her mind raced. What do you want? She shouted, fury and fear mixing into bitter resolve. It made no sense to challenge the thing that had emerged from the depths of her worst nightmares, but something in her refused to back down. The thing shifted, its shape blurring with unfathomable speed. Inside the car, the temperature plummeted, breath visible in icy clouds, every shiver echoed a long-forgotten memory. And then, in a voice like the crunch of dried leaves, it answered, I want what you have lost. A knot of ice formed in her gut. The shadows surged, and the air grew thick, the weight of unfulfilled promises and grief nearly suffocating. What did it know about their pain? Jake, hold on. She shouted, breaking from her reverie. She slammed the accelerator again, launching the car forward. But the road seemed to twist, shifting and bending like a sinister maze designed to trap them. Go faster, Mom. A blast of cold air swept through the car, carrying whispers of sadness. Let it in, let it take. With every lurch of the vehicle, the shadows stretched and reached toward them, desperate, hungry. She struggled against the impending darkness, fighting memories of that terrible day, of loss that she thought she could leave behind, but could surrender be a way to find peace? Sarah bit her lip, her heart hammering as she raced toward uncertainty. What lay ahead was obscured even deeper than the nightmares behind them. Would their escape lead to a flicker of hope, or to the dark embrace of something far worse? The tires screamed on the asphalt, the car bouncing over rocks and roots that threatened to tear it apart. Sarah's pulse raced, a brutal symphony of dread pounded in her ears. Sweat trickled down her back as she fought to keep control. Mom, it's coming. Jake's voice shook. She turned her head slightly, catching a glimpse of the nightmare behind them. The figure was a blur of malevolence, blending into the shadows that seemed to stretch across the road. It surged forward, its grin widening, revealing jagged teeth glimmering in the sparse moonlight. Don't look! Sarah screamed, shoving the car harder into the darkness. But the void wrapped around them, whispering secrets of despair. Give and let go, it murmured as they plowed deeper into the unknown. Mom! Jake sobbed, the sound breaking Sarah's heart. What does it want? She swallowed hard, her throat tight with panic. I don't know, sweetheart. Just stay quiet. Please. The road twisted, a cruel serpent that led them further into the heart of the suffocating forest. The headlights barely cut through the fog, painting flickering shadows of twisted branches that clawed at the sides of the car. It felt like they were crawling into a mouth that would never let them out. Then suddenly, a terrible screech pierced the air. The tires lost traction, skidding across the gravel. Time slowed as Sarah braced for impact, her heart leaping into her throat. Hold on! She yelled, as the car careened sideways and slammed into a thick trunk. The world-shattered glass exploded around them, and for a heartbeat, silence enveloped them, punctuated only by Jake's whimpers. Jake! Panic clawed at her throat. She turned to see him dazed but unharmed. Relief washed over her, only to be scorched by chilling dread as the whispering shadows circled like vultures. The figure loomed at the periphery of her vision. It inched closer, its raspy voice now a desperate plea, "Let me in, Sarah. I can bring him back." She didn't want to hear those words. Her mind rushed back to a time when laughter filled their home, before the world shattered with loss. The memory pulsed like a fresh wound. No! She shouted, heart racing at what was being offered. You're a lie. But the shadows only laughed, dark and twisted. It's your choice, in your hands, it insisted, eyes glowing beneath the veil of darkness. With a flame of defiance igniting in her chest, Sarah fumbled for the door handle, adrenaline fueling her actions. We'll fight it, Jake. Don't leave me. He cried, reaching for her. I won tea, she replied, grasping his hand tightly. Hold on. Together, they stumbled from the wreck, shock settling in. The forest loomed around them, thick and ominous, every shadow alive and watching. The air was heavy with sorrow, cold as death. Where do we go? Jake's voice was barely a whisper. Anywhere but here, Sarah breathed, pushing herself into the oppressive blackness, but as they stepped further into the woods, a new sound joined the whispers, the crashing of branches, a low growl, like the promise of something monstrous descending from the trees. Mom, what is that? Jake's eyes widened, fear crystallizing. Run! Sarah shouted, determination propulsive. They ran, hearts pounding, as the shadows coiled tighter around them. They raced deeper into the grasp of the forest, but the echoes of the lost followed, promising despair, calling out, return to the darkness. The tension crackled in the air as they pushed forward, no clear path in sight, only the sharpness of whispered deceit. What cruel reality awaited them in this place of shadows? Would they find safety, or were they stumbling into the very maw of darkness? Branches whipped at them, sharp and jagged, as they tore through the underbrush. Sarah's lungs burned with each desperate breath, but she refused to slow down, gripping Jake's hand like a lifeline. The growl echoed behind them, a deep rumble that vibrated in her chest and taunted her with its proximity. Keep running, just keep running. She urged, her voice strained. Each step felt like racing against a steady tide pulling them back, a force hungry to reclaim its lost prey. Suddenly, Jake stumbled, tripping over roots that snaked through the forest floor. Mom, I can't, he gasped, terror flooding his eyes. She felt the ground shift beneath her, like quicksand, dragging them toward the darkness. Get up. We have to move. Panic ignited a fire in her chest, and she tugged him up, their feet barely grazing the ground as they sprinted again. The shadows seemed alive, lunging and stretching toward them, claws of black wrapping around her ankles, trying to pull them into the depths. We'll be okay. Just a little further. She cried out, more for herself than for him. A flash of moonlight caught in the periphery, revealing a clearing ahead. Jake! The light! Sarah shouted, her heart clutching in his hopeful gaze. They surged toward it, but the growl morphed into a howl, twisting into a sinister chorus of laughter that sent ice through her veins. Sarah felt the prickling sensation of fear crawl up her back. "It's playing with us," she hissed through clenched teeth, her resolve shifting under the weight of dread. They staggered into the clearing, breathless. The light flickered dimly, revealing a stone altar in the center, ancient and cracked. Vines twisted around it, creeping with the same lethargic grace that had haunted their chase. "What is this place?" Jake whispered, his voice trembling as fear clutched his throat. "I don't know," Sarah replied, scanning the surroundings desperately. "But we need to find a way out." The laughter grew loud again, echoing off the trees, and Sarah's heart raced. The figure stood silhouetted at the edge of the clearing, half submerged in shadow, its teeth glinting like knives. "You've come to play, haven't you?" it crooned, voice dripping with malice. "Mom," Jake murmured, his hands trembling as he clung to her. "I won't let it have you." She snapped, a scream warring for release from her throat. The figure took a step closer, and the ground seemed to pulse beneath her feet. "You can't escape the inevitable, Sarah." With a flash of instinct, Sarah yanked Jake toward the altar. "We need to do something," she hissed, her eyes darting back to the monstrous shape now advancing slowly, confidently. "Like what?" he whimpered, eyes wide. "Maybe if we confront it?" But as she spoke, the whispers rose again, chanting in unison, "The darkness is your friend, pull the veil and you'll see." "No!" Sarah shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. "I refuse." Jake's small voice trembled beside her. "Mom, what if it's right? What if we know?" Sarah couldn't allow that. But the ground trembled violently, and vines twisted up from beneath, ensnaring their feet. The figure laughed again, its voice sultry, intimate. "Just let go, Sarah. You know what he truly needs." As Jake's grip loosened, tension spiked. The world around them shimmered and warped, caught in a dizzying flux as the shadows encroached, tightening like a vice. "Jake! Hold on to me." But the altar pulsed, glowing, a beacon of the unknown. Something flickered in her mind, a tenuous hope fluttering, that maybe, just maybe, this could work. But just as she resolved to take a step toward the altar, a sudden blast of cold enveloped them, chilling to the bone, and Sarah felt that something terrible was very near. What would they find in the depths of the darkness? Would the truth bring freedom, or would it be the ultimate betrayal? The chaos of the clearing escalated as shadows thickened like smoke, wrapping around them in tendrils of darkness. Sarah felt Jake's hand slipping from her grasp, and a surge of ice rushed through her. "No! Stay close!" she shouted, gripping his wrist tighter. Jake's eyes widened, reflecting pure terror, and the flickering light from the altar painted his face in frantic hues of blue and white. The figure prowled closer, its silhouette shifting and twisting, blending seamlessly with the encroaching darkness. "You think you can fight it?" the creature sneered, the voice tinged with a chilling mix of amusement and malice. Heart pounding like a war drum, she turned to the altar, the pulsing light demanding her attention. Uncertainty clashed with her instincts. "Jake, if we can touch it, maybe it'll stop whatever this is." "But what if it makes it worse?" he cried, his voice brittle and quaking. There was no time for hesitation. The creature's laughter burrowed into her mind, knifing through her sanity. "Only freedom awaits if you embrace the darkness or feel the sting of regret as it consumes you." It beckoned them closer, its finger elongated and sharp like a claw, irritation dancing in its eyes. The vines tightened around their legs like snakes, constricting but not breaking the skin yet. "Mom! I don't want to!" Jake shouted, panic squeezing the words from him. "You have to trust me!" she roared, terror fueling her resolve. "We'll do it together." 1, 2 Suddenly, the darkness shifted. Without warning, the atmosphere thickened, and the ground trembled violently once more, as if the earth were warning them to turn back. "Now!" Sarah yelled, pulling Jake toward the altar. They stumbled before it, his weight pulling back against her desperate sprint. "Please, just hold on to me." He hesitated, fear written across his pale face. What if it wants to hurt us? That's why we have to face it. Together. As they reached the altar, the light pulsated in rhythm with their racing hearts, a beat that echoed the turmoil within. Sarah could feel the energy tugging at her, wrapping around her like an embrace, sweet and grotesque. Step into the light, she urged, guiding Jake until they stood at the edge, where the warm glow met the cold shadows. You want sacrifice, don't you? Jake suddenly shouted at the figure. We want to give you that. The figure recoiled, its laughter morphing into a snarl. Brave little boy. Sacrifice isn't always blood. The ground shook with fervor, uprooting a sudden whirling wind that plastered dirt against their faces. She anxiously scanned the shimmering altar, searching for anything they could use. We need to touch it, she urged with a tremor in her voice. But what if it's a trick? Jake stammered, eyes darting between the altar and the encroaching figure. Life's too short for regrets, she replied, dragging him forward. On 3. Yet before they could count, the creature sprang forward, launching itself between them and the altar. Its face twisted in rage, a grotesque parody of humanity. You think you can escape? You are already mine. The air crackled, and the ground split open, a dark chasm revealing void and despair. Where writhing things strained against unseen bonds, countless screams echoed from below. Mom! Jake screamed, but Sarah was locked in place, frozen by the sight as hope twisted into a gnawing dread. As shadows surged toward them, she felt the light from the altar pulsing against her skin, a final call. I want to abandon you, Sarah shouted, her grip tightening on Jake. But the air grew heavy, stifling as the creature towered over them, a living nightmare ready to engulf them both. The altar fluttered again, now many eyes blinking back at her as if it were alive waiting. Would embracing the unbearable pull of the altar mean salvation, or would it seal their doom? The question loomed ominously as darkness clawed closer, ready to swallow them whole. What price would they pay to stave off the terror? The shifting darkness enveloped them, and Sarah's heart raced with desperation. The creature loomed, a grotesque embodiment of nightmares, and with every passing moment, its mouth curled into a smile that hinted at an unspeakable hunger. Don't look away, Jake, Sarah breathed, forcing her eyes to remain locked on her son. Yet, the pervasive darkness whispered temptations, slithering into her thoughts. You can save him, you can end this, just give in. No. She spat out, shaking her head violently. You won't have either of us. The walls of shadows around them pulsed, swaying to a rhythm that only the creature seemed to understand. Here, in this cursed clearing, every heartbeat felt like a countdown, echoing in the hollow silence. Sarah clutched Jake tighter, their bodies shaking as if held by an unseen force. Ready to sacrifice? The creature hissed, reveling in the chaos it had created. Something twisted in her gut, but she couldn't allow fear to take root. The altar-esque glow flickered in her peripheral vision, a fragile beacon amid the chaos. She felt the tug of its warmth wrapping around her thoughts, promising safety. Look, Jake. We have to try. No. Jake cried out, stepping back, eyes wide. I just want to go home. The word sliced through her like a dagger. Home. A place that felt like a distant memory now, overshadowed by this living nightmare. In the face of danger, her resolve sparked. We are going to get out of here, together. Look at me, Jake. The creature laughed, a sound like shattering glass. But it will all be your fault if you choose to resist me. You don't want the boy's blood on your hands, do you? A flash of doubt ignited within her. Would it really be better to embrace the horror? To sink into the depths of darkness and avoid the agony of choice? But Jake's terrified expression pulled her back. No. Focus. She screamed, forcing every ounce of will into her grip on his wrist. We're breaking free. With every ounce of strength, she lunged toward the altar. As the creature recoiled, shadows shrank back like frightened animals. The pulsing light intensified, casting away the darkness inch by inch. "Step into the light," she shouted, her voice slicing through the thickening air. But the shadows fought back, a storm of tendrils reaching for them, grasping at her clothing, tugging at her hair. Desperation surged as she sensed their strength, like cold fingers reaching for her soul. Suddenly, just as they stumbled forward, the ground trembled beneath them. The darkness roared as if wounded, and plumes of earth erupted, sending Jake tumbling into a nearby bush. "Jake!" Sarah shrieked, racing back toward him. As she turned, the creature lunged again. Its claws swiped at her, narrowly missing. She felt the rush of air as it grazed her shoulder, a chilling reminder of her mortality. The pain ignited fear, sending her pulse racing. "Jake, get up!" she shouted, panic clawing at her throat. He scrambled to his feet, eyes frantically searching for her. "I can't. It's going to get us." Then, the light winked, flickering as shadows engulfed it. The altar throbbed in agony, and Sarah's stomach dropped. "No! Not now!" With a guttural roar, the creature surged toward Jake, its eyes ablaze with malevolence. Sarah's heart felt like it might explode as she pushed herself to run faster. "Jake! Run to me!" Reality split at the seams. Shadows rippled into a vortex, pulling against the landscape as Sarah leaped toward her son, stretching her arms, willing herself to reach him before the darkness closed its jaws. Everything blurred as she dove forward, fear solidifying into a single, sharp blade of determination. But as her fingers brushed his arm, the world seemed to hold its breath, teetering on the edge of an unseen precipice. Would they be swallowed, or could they somehow find light in the encroaching shadows? The altar pulsed, an echo of hope but also of despair. What true price did it ask of them now? And as the darkness loomed, Sarah would soon discover, the cost lay heavier than she had ever imagined. Cold air rushed past as Sarah felt the world shift, time stretching unbearably. Every heartbeat thundered in her ears, and she could barely think. She reached for Jake, her fingers grazing his skin as the darkness roared ferociously around them. In that split second, the shadows surged, snatching at her clothes, dragging her backward. She felt a sickening pull, an almost magnetic force trying to tear her away from Jake. "No! Hold on!" The words escaped her lips in a desperate cry, but the creature's laughter rang through the chaos, mocking her resolve. Jake's terrified face twisted with desperation. "Mom! Don't let it take you!" His voice cracked like a fragile glass ball, ready to shatter. "I won't lose you. We will fight." She yanked him towards the altar, its light beckoning like a lighthouse in a storm. But the shadows whipped through the air, wild and hungry, thin tendrils curling around Jake's ankles like serpents. He stumbled, falling to the ground, eyes wide with fear. "Sarah!" he screamed, his voice slicing through the encroaching darkness. With every ounce of strength, Sarah yanked him back, lifting him as the shadows clawed at her legs. She was losing ground. Their escape felt like slipping sand through her fingers. "Stay with me!" she roared, her arms trembling under the weight of his body and the oppressive darkness attempting to devour everything in its path. "You need to let go. Let it take you, Mom. It wants you." Jake cried, tears streaming down his cheeks. The creature's sinister chuckle echoed through the air, feeling like icicles piercing into her heart. "Yes, let her choose, young boy. I promise it will be quick." "Shut up!" she shouted, her voice raw. "I'm not giving in to you." But the whispers were seductive. They promised peace, an end to the struggle that gnawed at her soul. For a fleeting moment, she felt tempted, but Jake's frantic eyes snapped her back. She couldn't allow this evil to win, not now. "Step into the light," she yelled, dragging Jake closer, even as she felt the pull of the darkness beckoning her. whispering promises of surrender. With a surprising surge of strength, Jake stood. "Let us go, Mom. Now." He pulled away from her grasp, breaking free for a moment, an act of defiance painted in raw determination. "Jake!" she gasped, panic twisting her gut. But he was already moving, bounded towards the altar. The creature howled, and suddenly shadows lunged at him, but Sarah sprinted forward, her insides chilling as Jake reached desperately for the altar's edge. His fingertips brushed the pulsating light, but just a heartbeat away everything stilled. It felt as if they were suspended in the dreaded moment before a dam bursts, before all was lost to the raging waters. "Jake!" She lunged, diving into the fray, the darkness tangling around her limbs like a malignant fog. Suddenly, a surge of energy shot through the air, an explosion of light erupted, tearing through the shadows as if the universe itself had struck back. For one frantic moment, Sarah thought they might escape, but the circle of darkness twisted violently, pulling them back, laughing at their struggle, relishing their fear, and as they were thrust away from the altar's light, an unsettling thought prickled in her mind. Perhaps the creature was right. Perhaps to survive would mean to sacrifice something precious. "Don't let go, Jake. We will get through this." She barked as the darkness roared in response, but as she turned to grasp Jake's hand, she felt a jarring chill slice through her heart. Her own light was fading, and the cost of survival whispered ominously in her ears. Would they break free together, or would the darkness consume them and lay bare the true horror beneath the veil? And as the shadows began to take hold, she couldn't shake the feeling that every choice brought them closer to a fate far worse than death itself. The light flickered, wavered, then exploded outward in a blinding flash, pushing back the swirling shadows that clawed at them. But the relief was fleeting. The darkness hissed like a wounded animal, gliding unnaturally over the ground, searching for its prey, intent on swallowing them whole. "Jake! We need to move!" Sarah yelled, adrenaline pumping through her veins like fire. She could sense the creature clawing closer, its talons scraping against the edges of her sanity. The altar's glow was a fleeting beacon, an ephemeral promise in this living nightmare. Time was unraveling, every second a ticking clock suffocating. Jake stumbled, dazed by the brightness and the chaos. "Mom, I can't, I'm scared." His voice cracked like old wood under strain, breaking Sarah's heart with every syllable. "Don't look back. We're getting out of this." Sarah propelled herself forward, pulling him back up to his feet. The shadows shifted, slick and liquid, they slinked around their ankles, threatening to drag them into the abyss below. She could feel them tugging, a defensive force of nature, primal and ancient. Suddenly, the laughter returned, deep, rumbling, echoing through the void. "Ah, sweet, sweet Sarah. You think you can outrun fate?" The creature's voice twisted around them, chilling and serpentine, mixing with the frantic whirls of darkness. "I'm not afraid of you," she shouted, even as her breath stung with fear. But deep inside, layers of doubt began to coalesce. What would they have to face? What would they lose before this ended? They could fight, but at what cost? In those moments of chaos, a strange impulse surged within Sarah. The whispers of the creature began piercing through the blanket of panic. "Join me, and all your fears will vanish, the pain will end." It was tempting in a way that terrified her. The dark promises sunk into her mind, squeezing around her thoughts like a vice. "No!" she shouted, shaking her head fiercely as she dragged Jake closer to the now pulsing altar. "We will fight together." She felt a surge of warmth, a tether to hope ignited by his presence. But Jake's face had turned pale, his resolve faltered under the weight of despair. "Mom, what if we can't fight anymore? What if it's too late?" "Shut it!" Sarah snapped, her panic morphing into rage, igniting her to press forward. Their footsteps pounded against the stone, every step throwing them further into the great unknown. She could barely think. They had to get to the light. Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, a tidal wave of darkness. Jake's eyes widened in horror as a tendril reached for him. Mom! He screamed, stumbling backward as he fell again. Sarah turned, her heart racing. Jake! She rushed back, but the darkness enveloped him. Panic surged, a suffocating wave. She couldn't lose him, she couldn't let the shadows snatch him away. She reached out with trembling hands, feeling the tangible cold of the shadows but also the warmth of the light stretching towards her from the altar. Grab my hand! She yelled, willing him to hear her over the chaos. Mom, please help me. The creature's laughter echoed again, a sinister mockery. That's it, little boy. Submit to the dark. Let it take you, I'll take care of you both. In the moment of his fear, Sarah saw a flicker of something in Jake's eyes, a reminder of their bond. No! You won't take him! She shouted defiantly. With a desperate heave, she plunged into the void, determined to save her son. The shadows lashed out, clawing at her, but she would not allow them to win. As she closed the distance to Jake, a blinding light burst from the altar. In an instant, shadows vaporized, swirling like smoke caught in a strong wind. Together, they would reach for it, but the impossible choice lingered. Would arriving at the light truly save them, or would it unveil a horror worse than they could imagine? Mom! We have to go now. Jake screamed, his voice pleading, yet somewhere behind him, a whisper seduced her. All would be forgiven if only she would leave the boy behind. A sharp crack echoed, like a whip snapping through the dark, and she caught the final glimpse of Jake's panicked face. Shadows began to swirl around them once again. Will you sacrifice everything for your son, Sarah? The creature taunted softly, the echoes wrapping around them tight. Will you sacrifice your son for your own survival? The walls began to close in, and amidst rising chaos, she could feel the undeniable pull of the altar's glow. She had to make her choice. Would she dive into the light and face her hidden fears, or would she surrender to the darkness that promised liberation even if it meant losing everything she held dear? With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah lunged toward Jake, fear igniting every fiber of her being. Hold on, Jake. I'm coming. She felt the shadows clawing at her heels, desperate to reclaim their prey. The dark figure loomed behind, its eyes glinting with malicious hunger, each step closer echoing with the weight of her impending doom. Unyielding terror crept into her heart, a nightmare inkling that maybe surrendering to the darkness could mean safety, but at what cost? No! We will not give in! She shouted defiantly, the words pouring from her heart like molten fire. The altar pulsed with light, a fierce lighthouse in this sea of despair, urging her forward. Mom, please! Jake's voice trembled against the howling shadows. She watched as tendrils snaked around him, wild and malevolent. Panic gripped her chest like a vice as she plunged into the dark haze, yanking him toward her. Grab my hand. You can do it, Jake. Just trust me. The darkness roared, drowning out their voices, its chilling laughter screeching in her ears. You can't save him. Let him go. It taunted, barbed words slicing through her resolve. But she couldn't lose him. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. Fighting against despair, she sensed the altar's glow flicker behind her. It was alive, suffused with a warmth that whispered promises of hope and freedom, a fragile balm for the wounds carved by anguish. We're breaking free. She urged, turning her body to shield Jake from the encroaching shadows. As they stumbled together, he looked up at her, face twisted with fear yet brimming with desperate determination. Mom, I want to let you go. He cried, eyes wide and pleading, flickering between faith and fear. Their bond pulsed between them, electric and unbreakable. Every shadow that wrapped around her tightened, clawing at her sanity like a predator playing with its meal. The cacophony of the darkness spiraled, a shroud that smothered her senses, and for a moment, she faltered. Doubt curled around her mind. Was it possible to embrace the void and find peace? Just as the question surfaced, a flicker of belonging echoed back in Jake's gaze. No. She wouldn't allow that darkness to win. Not today. Not ever. With renewed fire, Sarah grit her teeth and guided Jake back toward the altar, ready to challenge the looming horror. "We're going to reach the light, together," she shouted, pulling him closer as dark tendrils lashed out, slicing through the night with feral urgency. They darted toward the pedestal, the air vibrating as the altar's pulse synchronized with the beat of their hearts, resonating with their intertwined destinies. The creature let out a roar, jerking back in pain as they stepped closer, shadows shrieking, fading from the brilliance that glimmered before them. "You think you can defy fate?" it screamed, each word a venomous hiss that sent chills down her spine. But she was done being afraid. "Now, Jake. Touch it." They reached for the light, fingers stretching toward salvation, the warmth washing over them like a summer's breeze breaking through the storm. Then, the shadows erupted in anger, swirling into a tempest. "No!" The creature howled, and the earth beneath them quaked violently, a tremor threatening to swallow them whole. But they wouldn't stop. The moment of truth hung suspended like a heartbeat. Their fingers grazed the altar's surface, and for a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Light radiated, cascading through the shadows, engulfing them in a brilliant blaze that split the air with warmth. The darkness recoiled, its glittering talons losing their power, and a shattering silence fell. Suddenly, an overwhelming peace washed over Sarah and Jake, a love that wrapped around their spirits. It echoed with a promise: the shadows would no longer haunt them. Tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks, but they were tears of relief, tears of hope, a renewal. The weight of her loss and fear faded beneath the weight of unconditional love. The creature let out a final, horrid wail, twisted fury mixed with despair as its form disintegrated into nothingness, echoes of its malice fading to silence. The shadows released their grip and scattered like wraiths in the light, retreating to realms unknown. In that radiant moment, they stood together, battered but alive, woven together by resilience. The altar glimmered behind, now a sanctuary of warmth where darkness could no longer intrude. "Mom," Jake's small voice broke through her reflection, filled with wonder. "Did we really do it?" "Yes, sweetheart. We did it. We're free." He hugged her tightly, and she cradled him closer, feeling the warmth of life between them, the foundation upon which they rebuild. The sun began to rise, casting golden rays through the trees, illuminating the path ahead. They turned, hand in hand, echoes of laughter ringing with each step. The haunting presence had been driven far away, leaving the shadows behind them. Freedom tasted sweet, and Sarah knew they'd forge on, etching new memories filled with laughter, hope, and love. Shadows had haunted them, but their fight had set them free. Before them stretched a road not defined by darkness but by possibility, one they would walk together. And so they stepped into the dawn, embracing a future where the light would always best the dark. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss out on future exclusive stories that will send chills down your spine. Smash that like button now to help us feed the algorithm. Your support matters more than you know. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. What would you have done in their shoes? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us spread the thrill together.